This episode of Straight Outta Health IT is brought to you by Welling, your trusted partner connecting healthcare organizations, data, and innovation for a healthier community. Welling helps healthcare providers navigate complex challenges, from analytics and AI to workforce solutions and community health impact. Because at Welling, we believe when healthcare is connected, everyone thrives. Learn more at wellinkcommunity.com.
Straight Outta Health IT, the mic stays surgical. Christopher Kunney moves vertical, purposeful. Strategist with the vision, breaking every system's cage. Guests unfiltered, flipping chapters every page. Industry talk raw, no sugar, no varnish. From policies to tech, the convo ain't tarnished. Blueprints unfold, the future in the dialogue. Cutting through the static sharp like a monologue. Change makers in the building.
Welcome back to Straight Outta Health IT, the podcast where we cut through the noise, challenge the status quo, and get real about what it takes to transform healthcare. I am Christopher Kunney, managing partner of IoTech Consulting, CTO of Ask Me Your MD, HIMSS Changemaker Award recipient, and your host of what Sway.Health called the 2025 Podcast of the Year. So thank you, everyone, for taking time out your busy schedule to tune in to this very important conversation we're going to have today. So let's get started. Tell me something. You're sitting in a hospital right now. You just had a procedure. Your records, your diagnosis, your medications, your imaging, your lab results, your mental health history are all sitting in a database somewhere. And somewhere, someone is trying to figure out how to use that data to train an artificial intelligence model that could change the future of healthcare. But what they also are not telling you is on the dark web, your medical records are worth 500 times more than your credit report. Let's sink that in. Let that sink in just a second. 500 times. And the AI models that could be used to save the next patient's life cannot be built without access to these records just like yours. But there's a tension around that, right? The tension between the power of the healthcare data and the privacy of the person that data belongs to. It's the defining infrastructure challenge of AI in medicine right now. And today's guest is one of the people who's bridging that gap. So we're going to go deep today on one of the most consequential and misunderstood challenges in healthcare and clinical AI. How do you build an AI model that can transform healthcare without violating the privacy of patients whose data makes that model possible? This is not a philosophical question. This is actually a technical, legal, ethical, and commercial problem that is blocking the future of healthcare and AI right now. And my guest has built the software to solve that. So let me introduce to you Julia Komissarchik. She is the CEO and founder of Glendor, Inc., a company on the mission of safeguarding patient privacy by solving the PHI de-identification problem at its source. Julia, welcome to Straight Outta Health IT. So happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
No, it's a pleasure. It's been a long time coming. We have been trying to get her on the show for quite some time, and just logistical issues more on my part than probably anything. We finally made it happen, and I'm just so happy to have her here to talk about, again, this very important conversation. So what I like to do, Julia, before we jump into the whole, meat and potatoes of the technology challenges and issues, I want to know who you are personally. You're a co-founder and CEO that clearly has a technical and business mind. I want to know, and I'm sure our tribe, I call my listeners my tribe, what's your origin story? What brought you to this specific problem in healthcare and data privacy? And, what was that turning point that made you decide, I need to figure out how to solve this problem?
Well, if we go way far,
yes,
ancient
let's
history,
go back. Yeah,
then I was only interested in two things. One of them is mathematics and another is psychology.
Right.
So when it comes to CS, this is very much the human-machine interface.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Which, most of it is focused by AI, artificial intelligence.
Yes.
So as a result, I ended up with a degree in mathematics from Berkeley and degree in computer science from Cornell University. And then I've been working in AI for my whole professional life. For the last 10 years, I've been working in AI in healthcare.
Exactly.
And I was privileged enough to be part of the teams that created a lot of interesting IP. So I have 10 US patents under my belt.
Right.
And more coming up.
That's great. So what led you to this specific part of healthcare to solve this specific problem in healthcare?
Well, my co-founder and I actually started with a slightly different problem, and that is if everybody is a patient, and if all of us have seen the medical bills.
Yes.
That can run to pages and pages, and they're basically gobbledygook that is impossible to understand. So that's actually what we started the company with, how to create automatic methods to help patients understand what's in the bill, and that way actually correct errors and be in control of their own healthcare as far as the billing is concerned. And part of it was the patients were sending us bills, but we wanted to make sure that we protect their privacy. So we developed technology that they can use to de-identify their own bills so that they can send us, because in order for us to do work with the patient bill, we don't need to know it was John Smith. Exactly. Main Street. It's actually everything else is important, but not that part. So we developed technology for de-identification. And we're looking into the industry more and more, we realize that this is actually something which is even a bigger problem than just for billing. And that not only patients, but hospitals and everybody else has this issue. Like you addressed in your great introduction, it's something that we need to solve, because it's not either or, right? We either can decide not to share any data, you keep everything private, but that actually will impact the quality of AI models, because if they're not trained on data of people like us, they won't be applicable to us. And what us means, that's different cohorts, that's diversity of data, so that it comes from different states, different urban and rural environments. And
different backgrounds, ethnicities, all of that.
Precisely. So so not sharing data is not a solution. But if we share data, it is actually, unfortunately, highly attractive for quote unquote bad guys. It's actually actionable, and wrong people can make money on it. So it's very important. That's why it's so important to de-identify the data, or at least to identify where the sensitive data is, so that it can be further protected and not left and ignored. That's why we switched our focus and started working on detection and de-identification on sensitive information. And that's how Glendor became the provider of software, which automatically de-identifies sensitive information, so then it can be shared for research, for AI training, for prompting AI, for anything where one has
all sorts of applications for it now, because it's been de-identified.
Precisely.
So that's great. So I'm curious about the name Glendor Inc. Is there? I'm sure there's a meaning behind the term Glendor.
Well, I actually like Lord of the Rings. It's sort of the same, and I like the word Glen. So it's sort of in the same vein.
I love it. One of my favorite series of books as well, too. Oh, wonderful. It's exciting. So you stumbled upon, a new approach to managing and de-identifying. Well, I don't know if you stumbled upon it, but you found an approach to de-identifying data. I mean, you kind of described this as this quest you were on. And, that quest has led you to now pivoting and moving down this path. This is one of the, most heavily regulated and most sensitive industries in the world. I mean, how do you navigate that now as a founder, where you've got this intersection between software engineering and healthcare compliance?
Well, it's challenging. It's very different from any other AI application, because it's heavily regulated. And also, the most important thing, it's about patients, right? Anything we do will impact somebody who is actually in a very dangerous position. So it's one of the things which I always keep in mind, that we're, at the end of the day, we're working with, we don't work directly with patients, but we work with patient data, and we work with people who help patients. So for us, it's very important to be mindful of that at all times.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on kind of the next question I had, too, as we continue to kind of educate our audience, because everyone's talking about AI right now and what it is, the different flavors of it as well. But when we talk about AI in healthcare, and why is the training data problem so fundamentally different from AI in any other industry, what makes healthcare data both the most valuable and most complicated raw material for AI to digest?
Well, one of them is access. So if the study is a couple of years old, but it holds almost the same right now. If we look at the sources where the data is coming from to train those models, they come from a handful of universities, sort of coastal universities, plus several in the middle of the country. But it's from a handful of large universities. There is a reason for it. It's much harder to gain access to information in the rural hospital. Rural hospitals don't have the bandwidth or time to provide such data. But it's actually very dangerous because if the data is trained, let's say, on an urban environment, and it then applied in a tribal clinic, like I'm in
You're
Utah,
missing huge demographics there. You're missing.
it just won't work. That's the problem. It will make decisions based on the wrong information. And that's extremely dangerous. So everybody's talking about hallucinations when they're using ChatGPT for, writing emails. Imagine what it is for healthcare. It's much more dangerous.
Absolutely.
It's basically dangerous not to have diversity of data. It's one of the places where it's extremely critical.
Absolutely. And to your point, I think that's also one of the concerns that many clinicians have about the adoption of AI, right? The efficacy of the information that's being produced by these technologies. I mean, is it gathering data from all the relevant sources it needs to provide a high quality insights to help that clinician to better diagnose a patient's condition or evaluate that situation? And the concern is, to your point, if we're not collecting a robust set of data from all different data points, a variety of data points, are we really doing more harm than good?
Yes. And basically, it's statistics. It improved a little bit, but not by much. So if you look at the FDA-approved models, AI and healthcare models, there's about 1,000 plus of those. But if you look at the number of places where those models are used, the average is 1.
Wow.
Not handful, 1, meaning the model was trained on certain subset of data and it's used for that data. But if it needs to be trained, you applied for a different hospital or a different location, it won't work.
Completely different.
The quality goes down. And that's because it was just trained on this subset and that represents that particular location or that particular hospital.
Absolutely. Yeah, makes perfect sense. I did want to take another little bit of a step back. I should have probably asked this question up front. And because my listeners are wide, we have healthcare folks, we have patients, we have technology folks that are listening in. And so I did want to go back and just kind of define when we talk about PHI, protected health information. For listeners who may have heard the term PHI, may even be in healthcare settings and use the term PHI, but not really understand what does that really mean. Walk us through what actually PHI is, what HIPAA requires, and why de-identification is a critical gateway between patient privacy and AI model development.
So PHI stands for Protected Health Information. And what is defined as protected health information actually depends on the country. For us, it's HIPAA. So it's 18 points that are explicitly described in the law. But what is PHI? It actually depends on the modality. What I mean by modality is the following. A lot of times when people talk about medical data, sort of the go-to is texts, right? Either the medical reports or just texts from doctor's notes, etc. So in those, it's the names of the patients, addresses, anything which will identify the patient.
Exactly.
When it comes to other modalities, that's where it gets tricky because it's very much specific to a modality. So let me start with one which is sort of starting to be very important in research, especially in mental health, and that is voice. So you and I are talking, right?
Yes, exactly.
When I produced myself, basically that was PHI, but also how I talk, because my voice is recognizable. So is yours. Yours is. And as a result, if let's say the recording is shared, even if our name and our names and everything else was de-identified, others will be able to identify us, and that's where voice anonymization comes in. So it's not only PHIs and text, but it's also how it was said.
I never really thought about it, and I've been in this industry for a long time, but I never really thought about voice being PHI as well. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, but however, if we, let's say, convert everything to text, so we will lose the prosody of speech. In some cases, it's okay. if it's like dictation of the radiologist notes on the x-ray. But if it's an interview with a patient, especially if somebody is a mental patient, then prosody becomes biomarkers, meaning they can actually help identify, diagnose disease. So it's very important to keep the prosody in place.
Right.
So how do we modify the voice enough so that it won't be recognizable? At the same time, it will still have the same biomarkers.
Oh,
so
interesting.
That's a challenge. And that's just one, right?
Yeah. So you're able to de-identify voice data as well too in your process. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, there's this kind of core tension. I want you to help me articulate to our listeners. Again, without these large, diverse models, AI bias, and AI is biased and really not really valuable. They don't work across, a wide variety of populations if you don't include them in your data sets, and and they can cause more harm than good as well too. Talk to me again about how we start to get our arms around that, as we start to adopt these technologies more aggressively in healthcare. How do we ensure that we do capture the diverse populations information so that AI is being able to leverage it in its most effective way? Does the question make sense? Yeah.
Yes, it does. Well, it's something to be aware of, that we need to make sure that our data is represented. So first step is just awareness. What the data was that the AI model was trained on. Was it actually trained on somebody like us? Because if it doesn't, it might or might not work. It's not like that it won't work, but who knows? So it's the awareness of it. Also, it's actually if you look at it from some of the most difficult places to obtain information from is rural hospitals. But if you look at it from the rural hospital point of view, there's not much incentive in sharing the data. There's a lot of danger because HIPAA violation is there's fiscal, legal, and reputation damage galore. But it would be helpful to have more incentive for rural hospitals to share data, because I think that will help all the models altogether. And that's one of the
what do those incentives look like? I mean, what would incentivize a rural health system to want to go the extra mile in providing this information to third parties like research organizations, pharma companies, whoever might be interested in this? Yeah.
Couple of things. One of them, those models can be, if they're trained on their data, they can be used in their applications. So it's sort of the barter, right?
Sure.
I'll provide the data, but you provide the model. But it's also monetization.
Okay.
A lot of rural hospitals are in the red.
Talk to us about that. How do you monetize this type of information? I mean, we all know that data now is the next currency, and so well, I don't know if we all know, but data is the next currency, y'all. And so how do you do that?
Well, exactly the same way, to create there are some conversations about creating something like a NASDAQ exchange for data. But
interesting.
Yeah, because then, if you have you have customers for it, which is companies that are doing research, AI model trainers, etc., sort of data customers, and data custodians are the rural hospitals and the patients themselves. So to monetize it, there are several different models that are being discussed. But that's on the financial side. What we are addressing is, before all this conversation can happen, the data has to be identified.
Exactly.
The good news is, for most cases, the data users do not need to know PHI. They need other information. They need a connection between the data. They need to know that this all came from the same patient. They need to know the relative times of it. But it's not that, here's the patient, that's where they live, and they can come and knock at their door. So what we address is that first step, which is, let's cleanse the data so that it's safe to share. But there's also the other part, which is more of a society work, right? And us as an industry work, which is, let's create those data exchanges. Let's make it possible to sort of come when the users somebody who wants to develop a technology, if they come, they know where to go to get this data. Because if now, if you're talking to AI companies, a lot of times it's make or break time if they make an agreement with a large hospital.
Right,
You see
right.
the problem here, then that means that they trained the data on the large hospital.
The large hospital data sets, exactly.
And that's where they will be using it, and that's where the one comes in, the average
That's
one.
right.
So, but that's a bigger question. That's a bigger conversation for society. What I think is also very important is for whoever's data custodian and the patients themselves to be aware what is PHI, how easy it is to track them down, and how to make sure that they do not overshare when it comes to information.
Sure.
Like we discussed voice, same thing with video, right? Because
Absolutely.
well, faces, let's put it even aside for a minute. But we've all seen, celebrities photographing wrong things. And then in the mirror, there's all of this is PHI. And all of this can be automatically detected and obfuscated. That way, like sometimes hospitals have names of the hospital on the wall. Or it could be a whiteboard that a lot of hospitals use with names of the patients that can be accidentally photographed, right? Or it could be a tag, like, the patient tag or the doctor's tag. So many different things. All of them can actually identify the patient. And people sort of don't think about them that much. They miss them. And everybody does, right? We all send emails or photos where it's like, what was it?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You said something really interesting. Even the doctor's information is, to some degree, PHI. As well, too, not just the patient themselves, because based on the doctor and their specialty, you can identify what the patient's being treated for. Yeah, no,
especially going back to rural hospitals.
Absolutely.
There might be one patient with this particular diagnosis. The fact that you said that it was coming from this hospital, you basically identified the patient.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah. Interesting. Lots of challenges associated with it.
Yeah.
And then you talked about kind of this multimodal medical data that's, that we're trying to get our arms around too. And some of this data is unstructured, it's text, the information that you mentioned, images, voice, clinical notes, wearable data. Talk to me about how, what's been some of the challenges associated with taking these multimodal types of data and starting to figure out ways to de-identify them. And are we using approaches like digital twins to do that in an effective way? I mean, give us your thoughts about how you're approaching
Some do. But what AI comes to is how to recognize images, recognize texts, right? And then recognizes what was said, so-called natural language processing. And that's where it gets complicated. Because if, let's say, we as humans take a look at X-ray, it will be easy for us to identify, even if the name is unusual, right?
Right.
It will be quite easy. Well, I'm saying it with the reservation, but let's say high 90% easy to find the name of the patient on that X-ray. Because a lot of times on X-rays, they so-called burnt in the name of the patient. It's quote unquote easier for humans to do this. But when it comes to computers, that's where a lot of different technologies come in to mimic what the humans do. And then for every modality, it's different. But actually, even without discussing, take my word for it, it's complicated. But why would you even do multimodal data, right? For ages, everybody was doing reports. And that's where it gets interesting. For example, mammography. Every year, a certain percentage of population does the mammogram. But the beauty of it is, it's not only for breast cancer. It also shows blood vessels. So there are models that are trained that can detect whether or not somebody have heart disease.
Oh, interesting.
And
really?
As we know, it goes underdiagnosed in women. So this is the beauty of it. This is what the picture is worth 1,000 words.
Right.
The radiologist report would have been very exact in terms of the cancer cells, but it won't discuss blood vessels. But that's something that can be picked up as well.
Absolutely. And that's the type of data other groups might want to get access to create models around.
Precisely. Same thing for dentals, right? Dental x-rays, everybody does them, but they can be used for diagnosis of osteoporosis. I can't pronounce it, but you know what I mean, right?
Yes, exactly. Osteoporosis.
Thank you. I don't know why, but it doesn't roll off my tongue. You can also diagnose that, and that's very important. So it's all these things where you're looking at one thing and discovering others. That's the beauty of multimodality. But the challenge of multimodality is you have to use quite a few different technologies and techniques to actually be able to recognize it for different things. Like we just discussed, voice, photo, or medical images. All of them require some of them the same, but a lot of times different techniques.
Absolutely. And so I want to go back to this concept around digital twins and de-identification as well, too. For those who, again, may not be familiar with the term digital twins, provide an explanation for that and how that's used to support this this concept of de-identification of information.
Well, I wouldn't claim to be an expert of digital twins. I can tell you that we work with some of the companies that do, but I would
Sure.
refer to them to discuss this.
Okay.
One of the use cases that I really like is about pediatric cardiology, where a lot of times the experts are not present because it's rare. It's like some states just have one person for the entire state.
Right.
Who is
Exactly.
pediatric cardiologist. So it's very important to be able to communicate with doctors, maybe even in different countries, to discuss certain cases. So for example, I know of one project which uses digital twins exactly for that. And
Right.
in those cases, what they're using us for is because the information crosses the borders, it has to be de-identified.
Right.
De-identified enough so that it's not identifiable, but at the same time, there's a big joke that if you take a piece of paper and I'll black out every single word in it, it will be absolutely safe and totally useless. So you have to sort of be judicious which parts you de-identify. So that's my experience with digital twins, but we don't work in digital twins, and I like to defer to others for conversations about this.
Well, let's talk about how you guys approach it then. I mean, if your digital twins is not necessarily the approach or the methodology you're taking, talk to us a little bit about it, not giving away all your secret sauce or anything like that, but talk to us a little bit about how you guys are approaching de-identification of patient information.
Well, we look at it as the following. You give me a piece of paper, a file, and then I give you back the same file, but without PHI. How it works in reality is that AI is applied to that file so that it can be cleansed. How it is implemented on your location is it's actually, you don't give us anything. This is not a service. This is a piece of software which is run on your premises where you can see before and after, and then decide if you want to share those cleansed images with somebody else. But that's, once again, your decision. It's, well, frankly, none of our business. So that's how it works. But basically, the idea here is that input is a folder of stuff, which is multimodal medical data. And then software is pointed to an output folder, which is the same stuff, but cleansed. So we keep it simple.
All right. Now, makes sense. Talk to me a little bit about kind of from your perspective, this regulatory environment. HIPAA, the AI Act in Europe. State level privacy laws. It's keeping up with is it keeping up with the technology now from your perspective? Are there things that our legislative leaders need to be thinking about as we talk about AI for now and in the future, and specifically around the governance of patient health information?
Well, with things developing so fast, it's like Alice in Wonderland. You have to run very fast to stay in the same place. It's very interesting because, for example, Utah, I'm in Utah. Utah is doing a lot of cool stuff about AI. They're looking into different applications. Every country every state does it differently. Every country. A lot of times it's conversation about responsible AI. And in my view, responsible AI, two parts. One of them is training responsibly, meaning from PHI point of view, training it on de-identified data, but also using it responsibly. Because, for example, how many times I heard about those stories about people just submitting all their information to ChatGPT to get result because they're they received a report, they didn't like it, they submit it as is. That's actually very dangerous. But patients can do that legally because it's their data. They can submit it anywhere. They shouldn't ever. It should be de-identified. If the doctor does the same thing, it's actually illegal.
That's right.
So it's responsible AI in terms of how to use it responsibly, meaning what kind of information you're submitting for analysis. So for me, my point of view, that's where responsible AI concept comes in on both sides. And different states are doing different things. As I said, if listeners are interested, I would check out Utah. It's extremely active.
Really?
AI in healthcare space. Yeah, AI in general. Yeah.
I know I was at our state capitol here recently. We were doing a healthcare IT day at the Capitol, and I had the opportunity to talk to a handful of legislators about AI in particular and what's on the docket this year around AI and machine learning within our state that they are considering. And one of the things that came out of that discussion that was a little bit alarming for me is that most of them said to me is that they don't really understand AI. They don't really know what it is or more importantly, what it isn't as well. And so, how are you making legislative decisions about the governance and use of this if you haven't been educated on this? Is this something you've seen? I don't know if that's unique to my state or not necessarily calling out my state, but is that something you've seen? Because you pointed out Utah as one that's progressive in this space. But is that something that's still a challenge for our state and federal legislators? Is just a lack of understanding, and how do we fix that?
Well, it's a challenge for all of us. Right?
Okay.
Because
that's
we
fair.
all don't understand AI.
That's fair.
No, I'm actually not being facetious. Certain things, like not even the question of understanding AI, but the question of understanding what are the consequences. Because things are developing so fast. But that's my biggest concern, that we as a society need to spend more time, and legislatively as well, but we all need to spend more time discussing things and discussing what we want to do, because otherwise the decision will be done by us, not by us, but by circumstances or by AI itself. We have to be mindful of this, because yes, AI is useful for a lot of things, but at the same time, it's developing really fast. So I'm not trying to say, let's kill AI. No, not at all. But it's something that
if Pandora's box is open, I don't think we can stop it at this point. It's how do we now best manage it as best we can?
Yeah, precisely. But it's funny how so in the 60s, there was a lot of interesting sci-fi written.
Yes.
And a lot of times it was discussing exactly those issues. So,
and it's interesting, those utopian worlds or dystopian worlds that were affected by AI were not always very positive, and I think that's part of the concern, we have, because we created this narrative too, based on some of those, sci-fi movies and books, et cetera, that's, AI is going to not necessarily benefit mankind long term, that it's actually going to be, a hindrance or in some cases detrimental to mankind, so to your point, I think we need to have more conversations about it, discussions about it, and talk about how we put guardrails around it as well.
Yeah. I don't think any of us have answers, but I strongly believe in discussions. We can reach answers which will be palatable to our society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to pivot a little bit and let's talk about, Glendor and the PHI sanitizer.
Less dystopian?
Yes, less dystopian. Exactly. Yeah. Really, really positive that's being the application of it. As I was doing my research and I was trying to learn more about your company, and I read the Glendor PHI sanitizer, which was really intriguing to me. Talk to me about that and how you guys are approaching, this de-identification of data using this platform.
Well, we make an assumption that we shouldn't make any assumptions.
I like that.
If we go back to X-rays, right? A lot of times the name and information, the sense information is located in the upper right corner. But it could be in the upper left corner. It could be somewhere in the middle. If, for example, there are two X-rays, two X-rays side by side. There's so many different ways. So whenever we approach something, we say, okay, let's not make assumptions that because it was Philip's machine, that it will be right here. It can be anywhere, because it can be. And same thing, for example, for meta tags. Once again, DICOM, which is the format that is used for medical imaging, is deceptively called standard. However, when it comes to meta tags, there's custom meta tags, which are absolutely Wild West, but there's also standard meta tags. Once again, deceptively called standard, because it's not like patient's name will be only in the patient name meta tag. It could be in description. It could be accidentally entered somewhere else. So once again, making assumptions that patient name will be nicely placed in the patient name tag is very dangerous. So that's the main approach that we have. Don't make any assumptions. From a technology point of view, we use the approach which is through my professional career, we called it hybrid approach. Right now, there's another term which is called ensemble approach. But basically, the idea here is that you use quite a few different technologies and techniques, and then each of them have their weaknesses and their strengths. So you try to compensate for weaknesses, use the strengths, and then in combination, Yeah, it's like teamwork, but on the algorithm level.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that approach. So it sounds like you had an interesting approach and a methodology for de-identifying the data. And I want to talk about how AI models get trained to ensure that de-identification of data doesn't degrade the clinical utility of the data. Because if you strip out too much context, right, the model can't learn from what it needs to learn from. You talked about, blacking out all the data on a document, and to the point where the document is really not useful. How do you thread that needle? I mean, and I don't know if that's a question you can effectively answer, but I'll ask it anyway. How do you thread that needle? Yeah.
Carefully.
Yeah.
That's where you have to be very careful how you do this so that you don't overdo it. Like we just discussed with voice anonymization, right? One of the ways is to just completely erase the voice, but then you'll lose all the processes. So it has to be done carefully. It's very much modality specific. What I mean by careful means different things for different things. But also I can say that, yes, AI model training is right now the sort of the topic du jour, but AI is not only models. There are quite a few different other techniques. So, but most of the usage of the data is right now for AI models. So
modeling.
Training, yeah.
Absolutely.
But not for example necessarily for de-identification.
Makes sense. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about if the healthcare industry continues to pursue AI development without solving the PHI identification problem properly, what does the future look like? I mean, this dystopian future, right, around the use of this. What are the risks we're building into these systems if we don't figure out how to do that effectively, or if they don't use your technology, right, and they decide to go a different path?
Two things. One of them is everybody will say, okay, we're not sharing any data, so the models will be not effective and also be actually dangerous because they will make assumptions based on the wrong population, right? We've seen it even in research, where research was done on one population and applied to another population, and it's actually very dangerous. It's detrimental to health. Or one will say, okay, forget it. All the data is already out there. We don't have any privacy. Let's forget about the privacy. And that's another dangerous thing, because I don't even have to go into that, because there's a lot of danger in disclosing too much. There could be, people can be discriminated. People can be blackmailed. There's so many. There's so many different use cases that I don't even want to think about, which is basically dystopia once again.
Absolutely.
So but it doesn't have to be either or. It can be a palliative decision, which is, let's de-identify the data, then we'll have the data for training. Let's make sure that the patients and the doctors are compensated for that training, as well as at the same time protect patients. Because in most cases, there are edge cases, but in most cases, not a lot of information needs to be known about the patient themselves, right?
Makes sense. One final kind of big question, and then I got kind of what I call my rapid fire round as well, too. At the end of the day, you kind of touched on it in your last response, and it comes down to trust, right? From a patient's perspective, trust that in how the data is being used is really foundational to really everything we're talking about. How does de-identifying data infrastructure change really the trust conversation between the patient and the healthcare system? I know I'm writing a book right now on this topic of diagnosing distrust, why Black and brown people don't trust the U.S. healthcare system, but also how we can use technology to close that gap. So talk to me a little bit more about, let's drill down just a little bit further in this concept of trust and how that's so important for the success of the use of AI going forward.
Well, from my perspective, it's a trust in trusting that the data the patient submits or surrenders to not surrenders, but the doctors know a lot about the patient, how it is handled. And we know stories where, for example, large hospital, let's keep it nameless, shared information with Google. They actually shared, and legally they did everything right. But in courts, they didn't violate any particular law, but the patient stopped trusting them. Trusting them not only in data, but in decisions. And that's a very big deal. At the same time, and that's interesting, a lot of times people trust AI more than humans. And that could be dangerous, going back to our discussion. What is the AI making decision on? But sometimes they feel that this is more objective. So
Absolutely.
it's yet another, I'm sorry, but my answer would be it's yet another conversation that all
Yeah.
could have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I completely agree. And I'm a firm believer in, from a, governance perspective, we talk about AI governance and ensuring that the data and the LLMs and all have the level of efficacy around it. But I envision leveraging AI to hold us accountable as human beings too, and asking us and evaluating our decisions and saying, did you make that decision based on bias? Would you have treated another patient who looked differently the same way? Are there opportunities for AI to also govern us and our ability to provide unbiased care for patients as well? So
Once again, if AI
yes.
isn't biased itself, which it
Right.
should not be,
That's
that's
correct.
the problem, right? We
Right.
all have seen research where if we
Yes.
take just, let's say LLMs, which are trained on publicly available data,
Right.
publicly available biases are inherited. So
Absolutely.
it's,
And I think, and I think at the end of the day, the question, we have bias in everything we do, right, in life. And the question is, how much of that bias then becomes detrimental to patients and allow these technologies to do more harm than good? I think it's the challenge we all face today. All right, let's as we wrap up. Thank you, because I could talk to you for hours about this stuff,
thank
but
you.
you got to get back to your day, and I want to be respectful of that. So I'll do a quick, fast, rapid fire round of questions, kind of your Rorschach test here, and to see what comes out. Just answer whatever comes out. First question is the biggest misconception about healthcare data identification right now. De-identification right now.
That it can be done easily.
Okay.
There's actually two misconceptions. Either it can be, it can be done easily, or
Right.
it's too difficult, so let's not do it at all.
Exactly.
So it's a sort of a twofer.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword there. Exactly.
Yeah.
The one thing healthcare systems CIOs should be asking every AI vendor that they're currently not asking now.
How do they handle privacy, PHI, and data that can be occasionally received by them, which is with PHI? Do they cleanse it?
Makes sense. HIPAA was written in 1996, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how well does it actually protect patients in the age of generative AI?
Funny you mentioned that. Actually, I'm co-author of a paper on sensitive imaging, which goes beyond HIPAA. So it's going to be a longer answer. But this story is based on the fact that pediatric patients, oncology pediatric patients, occasionally have to take full nudity photographs as part of their care. Right. Unfortunately, if the hospital doesn't handle this right, and by right meaning that only the treating physician have access to it, janitors can get access to it. And people who want to get access to this data get hired as janitors.
Right.
So sensitive imaging in itself is not yet part of the HIPAA law, but it should be like gruesome images. Remember, like those air crashes and everything, or autopsies. So there's a lot of things that need to be added to it. So that would be my answer. And if anybody is interested, please contact me. I'll send you the paper. It was published in a SIM magazine.
Absolutely. Well, you have to send me the link to it. We'll include it in the show notes as well. Well, last question for you. And thank you so much, Julia. What an amazing and thought-provoking conversation. You've enlightened me on some things I weren't really, sensitive to as it relates to de-identification of data and the types of data that you're now having to think about de-identifying. If someone was interested or a health system was interested in getting contact with you and wanted to learn more about, Glendor and you and your expertise in this space, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Well, LinkedIn or julia@glendor.com. And I'm happy to jump on a call and discuss this further. But thank you for including this.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Well, that's it, folks. I'm going to drop the mic on this one. I want to thank Julia for taking time out of her busy schedule to come and talk to us and educate us on, AI in the age of de-identification of patient health information. This was definitely an education, I know, for me, and I hope for many of you. And if you did like this episode, please share it with your friends and your colleagues, even those coworkers you're not too thrilled about, because they can all learn something from Julia and her thoughts on this very important topic. So if you, again, like this episode, please subscribe. Please share it with your privacy officers, your chief AI officers, your data governance team, and anyone else you think could benefit from Julia's insights. So with that, thank you, Julia, again, for being a part of the program. And for those listeners, my tribe, thank you for your continued support. This is it. We'll close this one out for today, and we'll see you on the other side. Take care, and God bless.
Straight Outta Health IT, where the talk stay free. Tune in, turn up. This is where you want to be. Data-driven dreams, they decode the code. Hack the status quo, make the old ways implode. Gusts dropping gems like pockets of gold mines. Healthcare's front lines, redesigned in real time. Kunney got the mic, architect of the chatter. Revolutions in the air, healthcare's new chapter. From telehealth to equity, nothing stays unseen. This is more than a podcast, it's the dream machine. The system's pulse is beating to the sound. Voices of change tearing back.